I'm not an expert in the topic. I just have some articles using Google Trend data. These are the two important studies on Google Trends. If you want to perform a Google Trend study, you may refer to them for further information. Studies are generally designed to look at the infomediology or infovariance methodology framework or to assess the methods, tools, and statistical data. Infomediology is a combination of two words, information plus epidemiology. Its definition is information in an electronic media, specifically the internet. So it is not specific to Google Trend studies, but all internet studies. It includes Twitter, YouTube studies, and so many other sites which use this word. The ultimate aim of such studies are to inform public health and public policies, which can be garnered from these websites. On the other hand, infovariance is the combination of two words, information plus surveillance. It is a longitudinal tracking for surveillance. Google Trends are generally used for two aims. First, to investigate online behavior towards health topics. Second, to forecast or survey or track or monitor prevalence of a disease. Google Trends is a free tool. The Google Trends provides data about the frequency of keywords that are searched on Google search engine. You can easily access with this link that is given here. So when you go to the first page of Google Trends, this is how it looks. You may enter the search term to the box to see the trends. Let us see an example here if we want to perform a Google Trend study. Suppose the example is lupus. How can we choose the search term? We have some options. We can either determine to search the full word systemic lupus erythematosus or a short name lupus or just the abbreviation that is SLE. What we will do is we will search all the three of these terms separately and then see what are the search results like. When we search all the three together, what we find is the term lupus has got the maximum search results. You can see it here. And so the term lupus could be the primary keyword for our searches on SLE. So there are a few search tips to add keywords in Google Trends. For instance, the term systemic lupus erythematosus will include all the searches. That includes one of these three words, that is systemic or lupus or erythematosus. For example, you can take systemic lupus erythematosus treatment or prognosis of lupus or erythematosus systemic. So you can put it in any order you want. Since lupus is a more general term, it is expected that there are more search volumes than systemic lupus erythematosus when we use the word lupus. The next question would be if SLE is an important abbreviation. So is SLE mainly used for lupus or is it also an abbreviation for other topics that are not related to lupus? So let us look at the top related queries on Google Trends. So these top related queries or top searches are terms that are most frequently searched with the term a person has entered. So when I looked for the abbreviation SLE, the most common search was that for the GMC truck. So should we not use the SLE abbreviation for information on lupus? No, that is not true. What we can do is, if at all we want to use the SLE abbreviation for lupus, we may exclude the searches that include GMC Sierra by a minus sign. We can easily find these terms in the top related queries. That is SLE minus GMC minus Sierra. In other words, we are excluding the words that are not related to lupus directly. An alternative approach would be to choose health category rather than all categories in the category section. In this option, the normalization process will be among only health searches and not all searches. So as expected, the searches for SLE minus GMC minus Sierra are lower than that for SLE because it excludes the searches that include GMC or Sierra, which were the top searches before. This is one way to optimize for the specific keyword we are looking for. The other ways are we can also choose and set the region and time period for search. We may choose the countries, the time, and usually the time period begins from 2004. The next term I'm going to introduce you all to is the RSV. The RSV is the relative search volume. Google Trends automatically will adjust the results by dividing the search term by the total searches that are possible. And then Google will present the result on a range of 0 to 100, where 100 represents the highest number of searches. After we have finished the searches, we may download the results from here, and once we download, we can analyze the data as per our objectives. This is a time series plot with a polynomial trend line. The green time series first showed a decrease and then an increase. It is called an U-shaped trend. With Google Trends, we can also analyze seasonality. For seasonality, we should include countries from both the hemispheres, because if there is a seasonality, we may expect to see a seasonal pattern out of phase by about 6 months between these two hemispheres, as the seasonal months are reversed by 6 months in these hemispheres, as we know. Australia and New Zealand are southern hemisphere countries, and their pattern is reversed by 6 months as compared to the northern hemisphere countries, that is the US, UK, Canada, and Ireland. So the other advantage of Google Trends is that we can present the top rated queries as raw data as a table. That is all the 25 queries that Google provides, and also we may classify them as either symptoms or definitions of lupus or treatment of lupus. By this data, what we can interpret is what is the public, or what is the information that public requires. Is it based on the symptoms, or do they need information on definition or the treatment of lupus? Another piece of information that Google Trends can provide is the sub-regional data and heat map of a country. For example, this study, where they analyzed the patient demand for plastic surgeons in each state of the United States. What the investigator did was that they used the keyword plastic surgery team and put it on Google Trends. They then downloaded the data from each state of USA from here. After this, they divided the Google relative search volume by surgical density, that is surgeons per 10,000 people. And then what they did is they calculated the patient demand index. With such a study, the investigators could find out that Wyoming had the highest demand for plastic surgeons and Oklahoma had the second highest demand for plastic surgeons, so that with such data, you can properly redistribute the healthcare resources. This is another type of study. In this research, Google Trends was used to analyze the internet searches of anxiety in mid-March to mid-May period of 2021. They calculated the expected search volumes for March 13 to May 9th, 2020 by using the historical trends from 2004 to March 12, 2020 with the use of autoregressive integrated moving average model, and then analyzed whether the actual Google data from March 13th to May 9th, 2020 was higher or lower than accepted. The investigators found an increase in searches for anxiety in late March to April. However, in late April, it returned to the expected levels that was previously seen. Another interesting type of study is that is a correlation between the internet data and traditional data sources of the disease. So this study, the objective was to assess the correlation of online symptom search for with the actual occurrence of coronary heart disease hospitalization in that area. So in this study, they correlated the coronary disease hospitalization with the internet searches, and then they found a Pearson correlation coefficient of 0.8. And they concluded that the internet searches closely correlated with the coronary heart disease epidemiology. So internet searches could also be used as a potential early detection mechanism for all these chronic illnesses, where people have a tendency to search for such symptoms which they suffer from in a particular geographical location. To support this further, there is an early study published in Nature. It provides evidence for using internet searches to detect influenza epidemics. But there is conflicting results on this topic. There was a later study that found that Google Flu Trends does not actually estimate the influenza outbreaks in a precise manner. The investigators of this study concluded that internet data are not substitute for national surveillance. However, Google Flu Trends should incorporate the use of near real-time data and for ongoing evaluation and improvement of this new data source. Based on these studies, we may use Google Trend data for surveillance. Its advantage is that it provides real-time surveillance, but it may only complement but not substitute for traditional surveillance data sources as of now. There are also some studies for predicting or tracking the COVID-19. These two studies suggest that Google Trend may be used for prediction or tracking the COVID-19. But probably its use is limited because of its high media coverage. In fact, there were two studies conducted to actually assess the exact impact of media coverage of COVID-19 on internet searches. They found that COVID-19 related internet searches are more closely related to media coverage than to actual epidemic trends. Then Google Trends were also used to analyze change in public interest in various health topics, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Some examples are the use of dermatology, plastic surgery, rheumatology, otorhinology, and several other disciplines during the COVID-19 pandemic. LitCovid search provided a total of 116 publications on Google Trends and COVID-19. Why so much studies conducted with Google Trends? Probably because it is a data that is easy to reach and easy to search and also easy to synthesize and evaluate. So the final important issue is the ethical approval, whether ethical approval is required for such studies. Now it depends on the law of the country, but majority of the publication or the published studies did not obtain an ethical approval because these studies comprise publicly available anonymous data and contain no personally identifiable information. Finally, to summarize, we may use Google Trend data to analyze trends of relative search volumes over time. We may also use to assess seasonality, as we already saw, to correlate internet data with traditional data for forecasting or surveillance or monitoring or tracking the disease. And we may analyze the related queries as to what people searched with this term and what are the information that is actually needed to public. Thank you all.